Hi there, Prairie Plant Girl here. Today I'm out planting my peppers. It's a beautiful morning, Sunday morning, and nice and quiet. The birds are out, the sun is shining, and right now it's only around maybe 10 degrees Celsius, but it is supposed to heat up this week, and our forecasted lows are right around the double digits, and we're past our average last frost date now, so it should be safe to put the peppers out. They have been hardened off and then they were put back in my greenhouse. They're not perfectly hardened off anymore. They've had a few days of pampering again because we had some really cold nights last week and I just didn't get them back out. But I think I have 11 varieties of peppers here, 2 types of jalapenos. And I've tried to get most of my sweet peppers kind of on the ends and around one side, and then my hot peppers across the front. I do have, I think, one just regular like sweet pepper on your side as well. This bed is 8 feet long by 4 feet wide. It's about a foot off the ground, but it's open to the native soil underneath. And I filled my beds years ago with like steer manure, peat moss, and bagged compost. Since then, I've added my own homemade compost over the years. I think these must be going on close to 10 years old now. And occasionally like bagged manure and things like that. So they have been amended over the years, but they still work really nice. They're still nice and fluffy. I've had pots, I've had trays of plants sitting on them, so it's kind of mashed down right now, but still nice and fluffy. I have drip running through here, just 1/4-inch drip lines. There's 4 of them going across the bed, so about a foot apart. I will be amending the holes with this. This is one of my favorite garden fertilizers. I'm not sponsored by them at all. I just like it. In fact, I have trouble finding it, but it's Pro Mix. And this one is the organic tomatoes, vegetable, and fruit garden fertilizer. It's a 448. And this is what I really like to use in my garden whenever I get my hands on it. When I'm not using this, I'll use like a bone meal or like a blood meal, depending on what the plants need, or like just a fish fertilizer. Usually is what I'll go with for my garden beds. And then I usually top dress with my own compost. So most years I stake my tomatoes. In the past I've used tomato cages, and this year I decided to grab a few tomato cages. I found some that seemed like actually decent quality at Dollarama. So that's similar to the Dollar Tree if you're not from Canada. Dollar Tree I think is more popular in the US. So I have 3 that I picked up the other day, and then I have 2 more kind of flimsier ones that I had kicking around. And then I have a few stakes, but I may get more of these. We'll see. Especially with the hot peppers, they get really full of peppers and you want lots of branching, and you can get a lot of peppers off a plant if you don't trim them up too much. So I'll do that. I do tend to keep my sweet peppers pruned a little bit more, just so that more sun gets into the fruit, and I feel like they can get a little tighter. Now normally, most years, for years, I've been planting my peppers 2 to a hole, and they grow really well that way. And sometimes I wonder if they help to get pollination happening that way, because the flowers are right against each other. There's lots of flowers there, and just help support each other in our winds. But this year I decided to spread them out a little bit and just see what happens with that. So it'll be interesting. I should maybe plant a couple together just to see if there's a difference. So I'll see. I have a few extras here. Maybe I'll plant a couple together. I'll put 2 early prolifics together and 1 separate. They're almost in the exact same spot. I know they're the same variety. Not really. No, so we'll just do those 2 together and see if there's a difference in those early prolifics. So I'm just going to be planting these. I'm just going to be planting these up, digging a hole, planting them. I usually plant them somewhat deep just to give them a little more stability. They get a little tall as I'm starting them inside, like a month. So the hot peppers I think have been about almost 2 months in advance. Sweet peppers about a month and a half I think now. And I'm also going to be putting a row of zinnias down the middle. I love having flowers in my garden. my vegetable garden. I think it's good for attracting pollinators in. It just looks pretty and I enjoy it. So I'm going to start with just popping a row of zinnias down the middle just while I can reach, and then I'll just get to planting the peppers. So I did a kind of a double zigzag row down the middle of those zinnias. It's California giant mix, and they get 30 to 40 inches tall. So for the most part, they should kind of poke up at least in line with the peppers, if not taller. Just kind of depends what kind of pepper year I have. So now I'm just going to get to planting these peppers, and then that'll be great to have these in. Because it's going to be really hot for the next few days, I may put up an umbrella or wrap even just some netting around this, especially if it's going to be windy and hot. So we'll just see, just to help protect them a little bit. Like I said, they were out being hardened off, but then they went back in the greenhouse. So that can take some of that hardening off away when they've been put away for a few days. I'm going to be spacing the peppers roughly a foot to 18 inches apart. I'm not measuring it. I'm just kind of going by what feels right. So I'm going to start with this early prolific. So this will be the one that I plant by itself. And I'm just going to dig a hole about the height of the scoop, a little less. And there's a drip emitter right here, about in the center of this row of zinnia here. So I'll just put the pepper there. Like I said, this soil is nice and fluffy. I don't even really need a digging tool. And then I'll put a little handful of that fertilizer in there. Pop off a couple leaves. Pop it down in there. Put that tag there. So that's that one like that. Now I have the two early prolific that I'm going to plant together just to see if there's a difference. There's a root here. Can't remember what I had planted in this bed last year. Try to rotate things around from year to year so I don't have the same type of crop every year. But I don't get completely hung up on that. I know there wasn't peppers in here last year because they were in my fabric raised bed. So again, I'll put a little fertilizer. Oh, I just ripped all the roots off that one, but that'll be fine. I'm going to take those bottom leaves off. Drop them in the hole. So now I have a California Wonder here. So like I said, about a foot, 18 inches. I'm going to just roughly use my scoop as a guide. And I have a candy cane. It took forever to get one to sprout. I think these were from Save Seed, if I remember. So hopefully it's true to seed because this was the only one I had. It's looking pretty sad, so hopefully it grows. I don't need a hole that deep, I guess. There. That's nice roots. It's not as full as the rest, but so this is a North Star. Here's another North Star. Oh, look at the roots on there. Lift those up just a little. Just make sure they don't keep growing in that pot shape. That's why you rough those roots up. This is Sweet Sunrise. Again, nice roots on there. It's a little bit dry. I'll make sure to water these all in really well once they're planted. Those two got a little close together. I'm going to move that over. And the last one for the side is another Sweet Sunrise. Okay, so I do have an Antoy Romanian over there. I'm going to go pop that in, and then we'll work on the hot peppers, and then I have one kind of special pepper I'll show you. And there's a few weeds down here by this guy. Let's get those pulled out. I'm going to plant this Antoy Romanian. Again, there's an emitter right here to water this pepper. Hungarian hot wax. Sugar Rush Peach. Pathfinder Serrano. This is a mild jalapeno. This is another mild jalapeno. No, this is Monet jalapeno, which is a hot jalapeno. Very tightly packed roots. Break those up a bit. This is another Monet. These want to get in the ground. Okay, so I said I had kind of a special pepper at the end. And this pepper is a sweet Annam pepper of some variety, but I don't know which. So there's a company, Atlantic Pepper Seeds is what they're called, I believe. Again, not sponsored. And they sell, this is where I buy a lot of my pepper seeds, like the more specialty ones anyways. A lot of the other seeds come from either Vessies or TNT seeds. Some are Mackenzie, just like off the shelf at my local garden center or wherever. But these are from this plant here. The seeds were from Atlantic Pepper Seeds. In the past they've sold, and I don't know if they still do, little packages, and they're just random seeds. I don't know if they swept them up off the floor after they've been seeding different varieties of peppers or whatnot. But so this is just a surprise pepper. You don't know what variety it's going to be. And then once in a while I decide to plant a few of those seeds. This is the last of those seeds, I believe. And I've never had anything phenomenal come out of it. But I started my last pepper out of that group, and this is, we'll find out what it's going to look like in the end. I'm just going to put it down here at the end of this row of hot peppers, and hopefully we get something kind of fun. But it's just kind of fun to have something that you're not really sure what it's going to be in the end. So. So that's our surprise mixed sweet Annam pepper. Time will tell if it was worth growing. For me anyways. So I'm gonna pop, like I said, I'll have 5 tomato cages. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll pop them maybe on the interior hot pepper plants here, and then I can maybe pick up a couple more cages for some of the other peppers. I don't really think I'm going to worry about. I might just cage them all this year. They do seem like a good quality tomato cage, so I think they might be worth purchasing a few more. So I'm going to pop those on quick, and then I'll give you a few more details about things that I get questions about growing peppers. Okay, so a couple of things about growing your tomatoes, or even the planting that I did, is first I removed those bottom leaves, and what I'm doing is trying to keep leaves from touching soil. Now I don't want to take all the leaves off the plant right away, but I'm trying to get most of them off the soil, because if there's disease or anything on the soil and it rains and that splashes up on the leaves, it can spread disease. Now I do have a few that are still kind of touching on the ground here, and as these plants kind of settle in and start to get stronger going upwards, then I will come along and I'll prune them down. Now what I like to do is the peppers usually will kind of start blooming and producing down lower, and then I can I'll keep the leaves trimmed up below anywhere where there's flowers growing, and that just keeps the stem cleaner so the leaves aren't down close to the ground and splashing up, and it also allows more air circulation. Now peppers can be planted fairly tight together. Like I said, I usually grow mine 2 to a hole, trying something a little bit different this year. But you do still need air circulation, and so I'll go around and I will prune, like I said, down kind of toward the bottom where the flowers have produced and the fruit is. I'll clean anything below that off and keep them cleaned up that way. And occasionally if they get, sometimes they'll start to really produce a lot of side shoots and branching, and then I will come in and I'll prune those off as well. That just gives you fewer fruit but bigger, larger fruit, or peppers, and I just think it keeps it healthier, less weight, less chance of getting damaged. Like I said, you can put a stake down along the side of the plant. You can even keep it down to one stem then and just keep tying it off on that stake. Occasionally the fork, I don't know if you can see that one there in the first cage, actually forked. There's a couple that did. I find my hot peppers quite often will fork. That just means that they had one main stem and then it branched out into 2. And so then I would just keep them that way. Hot peppers produce a lot of peppers, but usually most of them, at least the varieties I grow, aren't super heavy peppers, so they don't weigh the plant down too much. And like I said, I'm going to put the tomato cages on them this year, which will help support them even more. Peppers are very heavy feeders. They like a good regular fertilizing. Like I showed you the fertilizer I use, told you about other varieties that work well. Just an all-purpose fertilizer is fine as well. Also, they like water. There's a lot of water in the peppers, but at the same time, I find that if they're a little bit stressed, they actually produce better. So if you're pampering your peppers and giving them just really perfect regular watering, then they tend to not fruit as much as if they're a little bit stressed and looking for water a little bit, then they tend to flower more. Then they're like, oh, my life might be done here. I need to start getting some babies made, you know? So they want to start producing more. So you kind of have to find that balance and let them dry out a little bit between waterings if you can. Now mine is hooked into a drip system that it all goes off at the same time every day. But I do have a little valve on my drip line here that I can close up so they're not getting quite as much water as some of the other beds. And that can help. Also, when it's really hot, I'll supplement water some of my plants like cucumbers and tomatoes and that, just to give them a little bit more, whereas I won't be doing that with the peppers. It's supposed to get really hot this week and it hasn't been very hot. So like I said, these were out being hardened off and then they went back in the greenhouse because we had some really cold nights. So they aren't perfectly hardened off. So I may take a couple of large stakes like this and just put them in the corners put them in the corners of the bed and one down the middle of each side, and just wrap some garden netting around here, or get my low tunnels, take them off my peas and just give them a little bit of shading and a little bit of a windbreak. And actually I might just do that right now instead of waiting to see if I need to do it, because it is supposed to get really hot into like the 30 Celsius by the end of the week and windy this week. So they'll appreciate that just little transition into the ground. Otherwise, like I said, staking I think is important with peppers. The sweet peppers will get very large peppers on them, and then that'll pull the plant over. So you need to have them tied up or in like a tomato cage or something that'll give them some support. Your peppers will start out green on most varieties of pepper, or unless it's something like the Sugar Rush Peach starts kind of yellow. The bananas start kind of yellow. The Antoy Romanian is kind of whitish, or is it yellow to start? I didn't grow it last year, I'm trying to remember. But most of them will start out like their beginning color, which for a lot of peppers is green, and then they'll mature to the color. So if you bought a colored pepper and you're new to growing peppers, so maybe you bought a red pepper, it'll start green and then it will mature to red. So you just need to give it time to do that. You can eat it at green, you can pick it at green, but the flavor will intensify. Either if it's a sweet pepper, it'll get sweeter. If it's a hot pepper, it'll get hotter the longer you leave it and let it color up. So that's something to keep in mind when you're growing your peppers. Otherwise, I just keep the weeds down around the plants. Like I said, keep them watered, but let them dry out a little bit before. Make sure they're not getting, like that they're staked, so they're protected from the sun, and I'm giving them regular fertilizer. And I find that works really well for my peppers here. For the most part, if you can grow tomatoes, you can grow peppers. Even like I'm in Saskatchewan, Canada, we have a short growing season. It's about 110 growing days. I'm getting these in about a week after my average last frost, because we've had some cold, possible frosty nights. And I'll still get lots of peppers off of these, guaranteed. So stay tuned, keep watching back to see what I get out of these plants through the season. And we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye. I'm just going to put this net over the plants that aren't in the cages there on this side. But this side of the bed is the west side. This is where most of our winds come from. And this is where the hot afternoon sun is. So even just having this cage over here, or this netting tunnel over here, will help to protect the plants from the winds and the hot afternoon sun. And it'll even give a bit of protection to those plants. And if I find that this isn't enough to give those, they're not getting enough protection over on those plants that are exposed, this will give me something, kind of some height here that I can drape some netting or something over that side as well. Or I could remove the cages, and I have another one of these that I could put over there as well. So it's just a little bit of protection. It's amazing how much this little bit of netting, even though it's a sheer netting, will actually give a little bit of shading and protection from the hot sun on these plants that are newly planted. I am going to water all of these in really well individually before I start relying on the drip irrigation, and I may need to come through for the next few days and just make sure that they're getting really well watered, really deep, before I rely completely on the irrigation while they're settling in.